I'm with Rick Gordon, who's the one of the founders and CEO of Tidal Cyber, located just down the street from me in DC, Virginia area. Just found out that you were a Naval Academy graduate. What year did you graduate?
1991.
91.
Been a
Okay.
bit.
You are a youngin. Yeah, I graduated high school in 86, so you're younger. Hey, listen, so I'm just curious about what inspired you to even get this thing started at Tidal? You know, it was a big effort, I think, to get any company started, but you pulled
Yeah.
out of MITRE. So talk about some of that.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's a secret that the pedigree of our leadership team and really the first six people in our company were all MITRE people working in the area of threat informed defense. It was really our job there was to drive the adoption of the MITRE ATT&CK knowledge base into the commercial environment. And from MITRE's perspective as a national security focused nonprofit, it really was to improve critical infrastructure. I think from my perspective, serial entrepreneur, I went there to really make an impact. It's a mission that mattered. But I think we started to recognize, my co-founders, Rich Struse, Frank Duff, and I think all recognize that, yeah, this is doable. We can make this happen, but we have to build a SaaS-based platform that's commercially available. And in order to do that, we really did need to leave and start a company. So we did that about 2.5 years ago, and got the enterprise product out a little over a year ago, and it seems to be working really well.
Seemed to move pretty quickly. So how did you end up landing at MITRE? How did that all happen first?
It's funny. I was had been involved in a number of security companies, and I had some of them really successful, some of them less so. And I had one that I went to be head of corp dev at that we discovered some fraud. And I ended up being part of the management team that shut that company down. And so I had a little bit of time on my hands, and really spent some time thinking about what I wanted to do next. The when I had been aware of MITRE ATT&CK since it came out, shortly, after Blake Strom created it around, let's say 2013 to 2015 timeframe, had some significant experience in threat intelligence and really believed even in 2015 that this was going to change the way that I'll just say democratize the availability of threat intel.
Hmm.
And I'd seen, market leaders sort of really do well financially in threat intelligence, around that period of time by keeping it pretty scarce, which of course, kept the price of the threat intelligence high, but really forced the industry to sort of suffer through not having that information available to them so they could defend themselves better. And when MITRE created ATT&CK, it dramatically democratize the availability of threat intel. I'm not sure that Blake Strom even knows. I think he probably appreciates the impact of what he did, but having been in threat intelligence, half a decade before that, I really did see the remarkable impact that it had. And when I found out there was an opportunity to go be a part of that at MITRE, and in particular go work with Rich Struse, I jumped at it. It was, yeah, that was really an opportunity that where there for me to go do something that needed to be done from a platform that, of course, is incredibly impactful. Everybody knows, MITRE's impact on security, certainly in the vulnerability management space, really birthed it
Yeah.
with the creation of the CVE knowledge base.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When we first heard about it, I've been in this industry forever. When the members started to hear about threat intelligence, and there were so many feeds, and I think there was a lot of false information about it early on, some false promise. But I think the people who had vision, like some folks on your team, realized that over the horizon is going to be important. Just having some sense of what's coming at you, and of course, it plays out in the military all the time. So it's brilliant what's happened here. I think it's very smart. I guess the three of you, the real three core. I know you said six founders, but the three of you bring something different to the table. Can
Yeah.
you just describe briefly what each of you sort of bring to the table?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with Rich. Rich is a kind of a rock star in the segment. Rich, when he was a senior executive at the Department of Homeland Security, one, if you've ever met him, he's just has an infectious personality. He may be the
Yes.
nicest guy that I know in the security industry, but intellectual capacity is significant. Rich really drove the creation of the sticks and taxi standard when he was at DHS.
Wow.
So he understands like how to do big things. I think he understood that MITRE ATT&CK represented an opportunity to do another big thing when he created the Center for Threat Informed Defense at MITRE. Rich's customers were some of the largest, most sophisticated security companies in the world that
Mm.
consume security products. Think Fortune, 1000, Global 1000 customers that Rich was working for, building adjacent capabilities to attack to make it easier for them to use attack. And so that's Rich. And I think there's only one of him that exists on the planet.
That's big, broad thought. I mean, that is global scale kinds of thinking. Yeah,
Well,
and
yeah,
I've had the chance to meet him, right, at the roundtables. He is infectious. He's a great guy.
he's a great guy, right? You definitely want to be around him. Frank Duff in a I'll just say if I'm juxtaposing them like personality wise, Frank is much more cerebral, much more thoughtful. If I'm being completely honest, there's more about threat informed defense than either Rich or I.
Wow.
And Frank we were all working together. Frank, his big contribution to the industry before we left MITRE was the creation of MITRE ATT&CK evaluations. And
Wow.
I've seen a lot of security startups. I've never seen one grow that fast.
Wow.
And that was within a nonprofit. I think what Frank saw was that they're in a way that was similar to like security consumers needed to know which behaviors they needed to defend against. Frank saw that security product vendors needed the ability to articulate which behaviors they can defend against, and
Oh.
importantly, by extension, which behaviors they don't. And when he created MITRE ATT&CK evals, it certainly did a lot to create transparency and accountability in vendor claims, especially in EDR and SIEM,
Mhm.
of whether or not you can defend against X behavior, which I thought was important. But what I think maybe even escaped Frank at the time, and I think was like gave us this big shot in the arm, was the recognition that when Frank got security product vendors to structure and normalize their defensive capabilities in the exact same way that threat intelligence organizations were structuring and normalizing the adversary behaviors, it gave us the ability to do that matching
Mhm.
in software. And the ability to do that matching, you mentioned a little bit about like how threat intelligence had been maligned early on, like
Right. I
went
think
through
it's because everybody had their own approach to it.
the single most pervasive criticism about threat intelligence has always been, well, so what? What do I do about it, right?
Mhm.
And
How is it
because
contextualized for my environment?
and because we have these two different data sets structured in the exact same way, we can structure that at scale now in a way that could never be done before.
Interesting. And what do you bring to the table? Because
Uh,
Cincinnati can mean a
serial
lot, I think, but
serial entrepreneur. I did my first security startup in 1999. Probably over the last decade have done more on the investing side. I've made some really good bets
mhm.
with companies like Huntress or Adlumin or Black Kite, was instrumental in helping those founders get those launched. In many cases, taking a very contrarian perspective on the market,
Yeah.
um, and being right, especially about Huntress. That they were really contrarian in their go-to-market strategy, and they've just killed it because they were.
Yeah, we love Black Kite, by the way. We've seen them a number of times. Just a smart approach to their solution
But
space.
I'd
So,
say all three founders, I mean, I really have a huge amount of affection for them. They're really great people, and they built fantastic companies for all three. And there are a few others as well. But I have that in my background. I mean, I know how to build companies from nothing in a capital efficient way, eliminate risk, um, demonstrate achievement of minimum viable product, and then start to build and push that into market at scale. And it's fun. Rich and Frank get tired of me saying it, but there are no skipping steps when you build security product companies. I think we see a lot of companies at our stage or earlier get overfunded and fail because they don't recognize that they don't have product market fit and they still have more work to do. They end up
Yeah.
throwing, good money after bad. We won't do that, and we haven't
Right.
done. I think what we've done is very judiciously just sort of not skip steps and marched forward, hit our milestones, and successfully, and we're growing. I think you're going to hear a lot more about us in the next year because we've got a product that customers are buying and they're buying it more quickly.
Well, and I think, the timing of the market, we're going to get into just a minute how your solution's unique, but Guy Filippelli requested that I read, I think it's called Jumping the Traction Gap or whatever, whichever one Cleveland wrote. That's very good book about product market fit. And, we see this all the time, as you can imagine. We see vendor after vendor who want to get in front of our members. And we look at their slide decks and we wonder, how did you ever get funded? Like what is the guy on who says we should crush you like the cockroaches that you are, which sounds so mean, but it's you should have never gotten funding because you solve a problem that no one has.
Yeah.
You dreamt it up, right? You didn't do a product market fit analysis. And money's a little bit too loose at times, right? Maybe it's tightened up now in the VC world. You play in this world, so it's so interesting.
I mean, it's for sure. I think in the venture community or the venture environment's really contracted last year. Last year we got our seed round done. It was tough. I mean, it was
Hmm.
tough for everybody. I think venture investors in the security space were having a crisis of confidence. I think their LPs were giving them a lot of pressure for over investing or overpaying for deals in the previous year, and that backlash occurred. We made it through that, which is important, and we made it through it. And turns out we were right about product market fit, and we're off into the races now.
Well, maybe this tighter market will create a better product fit and will separate the wheat from the chaff more and start seeing better successful solutions, right?
It should. I do think it's funny though. I think from the venture perspective, especially later VCs that are really good at sort of later stages, I think with they may not recognize sort of the stages of successful startups, and they may come down market. We see a lot of them come earlier, but with let's say repeat entrepreneurs or people that have track records where they'll make bigger bets than they
Right,
probably
because
should.
they trust the people who are building that company or have taken over the reins.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, taking a company from let's say 5 million to 20 is not the same skill set as taking it from 0 to 5.
Yeah,
It's
I think that's very
significantly
true.
different, and and if you're making a $30 million bet on a company that is still in that 0 to 5 stage, you're playing roulette.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, that brings me to sort of what makes your solution unique in the industry and why is it now? Why is it so successful now?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, it comes down to the people that we have. We really do know attack, at least better than anybody that's commercializing a security product. I have great affinity for the MITRE ATT&CK team, and they're phenomenal. And it's we like them. We like them a lot. I've known them for a very long time. But I do think that the team that we have um, sort of has that level of understanding of how to describe adversary behaviors in a hierarchical way, how to assess defensive capabilities against those behaviors.
Hmm.
Importantly, how to understand whether certain tests effectively evaluate defenses against those specific behaviors. All three of those are critical elements of successful threat-informed defense, and our guys know that stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
we were, all part of this sort of, I'll just say, thought leadership community around threat-informed defense that, it's actually pretty awesome because a lot of the customers that we sell to, they know us already because of the stuff that we were doing before, and we really define threat-informed defense.
Right. Yeah, I
And
mean, you defined a category in a way, right? And brought this whole thing to life through automation, which so what is the thing you have found in the last 2 years that if we can just get this to happen, we win business. Is it a demonstration or is it a proof of concept or what seems to be the thing you go, that gives us a 50-50 shot every time?
It's nothing better than really good software. Like, I mean, we've got software continues to mature, our platform continues to mature at its core. We sort of cover the analytical rigorous basis. We didn't, we're not every assumption that we make on the threat intelligence side, every assumption that we make on the defensive stacking side is backed by data. We are MITRE people, a lot of engineers, a lot of scientists, and we're not going to BS our way through giving somebody what we call a competence score.
Yeah.
How well our defenses stack up against the threats that are being employed against them is a complicated analysis. There are over 600 techniques. There are thousands of different defensive capabilities. And we needed to come up with a way to understand what those are and what we think the impact or risk is of both sides. And part of our design criteria was to, essentially imbue those assumptions with our best sensibilities, but also give our customers to unpack the assumptions that we make with transparency and readjust them to their own sensibilities. Now, a lot of our customers, we know what we're doing, and so they'll use our assumptions, but in many cases, they get a lot of comfort in their ability to unpack the analysis themselves and understand it. And
I'll sort of see what's in the black box, right? And I think that's
yeah, I mean, that's, you mentioned Black Kite, or we both mentioned Black Kite a few minutes ago. That was a big competitive advantage for them. They really did open up the analysis that they did, instead of expecting that their customers, wouldn't have the level of sophistication or the intellectual curiosity to want to know why the product is giving the answer. I think they recognized that they needed to be transparent about that. Similarly, we do the same thing. We think the best way to build confidence in the analysis that the platform gives is to give the customer the ability to unpack it, but not make it overly complicated in the process. So
Yeah, they don't need to be a software engineer or an attack expert, but they should understand the assumptions you're making and why you're matching certain things the way you do.
right. So the design principle is give them the answer, let them unpack it, right? Easily. Let them adjust the assumptions in a way that makes sense to them. And what you end up with is a customer that understands how the product works and has a lot more confidence in what we're delivering to them.
In the simplest form, do this. I mean, give our viewers just a simple elevator pitch of what does your solution solve? How does it solve it, and why does it make life better for the CISO of an enterprise?
Yeah, a simple problem that has sort of plagued the security industry is that it is very difficult for any security leader to answer this really obvious security question. Do our defenses, as deployed and configured in our environment, defend us effectively enough against the techniques that adversaries who are attacking us right now are actually using? That is just, if you're a security leader or, a steward of budget that's going to the security side of your business, how can we not answer that question?
Well, and a board member should ask, I've given you an investment. How do I know that you are protecting me? Grade yourself.
Right. And candidly, I've been in security since 1999, so I've seen how the industry has evolved and how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
But at the end, and so I'm a little less incredulous that we had not been able to answer that question because it's complicated, right? I think threat intelligence was weird because the purveyors of threat intelligence kept it scarce by design in order to make more money. On the defensive side, creators of defensive capabilities also wanted to keep that to themselves because it was some competitive advantage to them. Certainly didn't want the adversaries to know everything that they were doing. The problem was that their customers didn't know what they were doing and
Right. The
couldn't
customer's just as blind as
effectively.
the adversary or yeah.
So spot on. So that's kind of how we got here, over the last 2 decades. But at the end of the day, that was a problem that needed to be solved because, putting on your board hat, what do you mean you need another $1 million when you can't tell me whether or not the products that you deploy right now defend against the things you need to beat?
Yeah, yeah, I love that approach. And I was so interested when you came and spoke at our roundtables. I saw members very intrigued by what you do. Well, let's have a chance to brag a little bit. I mean, give me a case of a client who's really winning. I mean, your solution is making an impact for them. Obviously, we're not going to say their name, but whatever you can share about a successful case study.
Yeah, I mean, at the essence is the product that because we structure things, threat intelligence and defensive capability information in software, we can do this attack coverage analysis really, really fast. In a way, so much so that where some of our customers used to do this once a year and it took them 6 months to do it, they just do it continually, and we actually recalculate those coverage maps every 6 minutes. Right.
Wow.
So that the key was getting the data in the right structure and building the analysis in a way with some clever approaches that we took to threat profiling and defensive stacking that allowed us to do that. But it's a big efficiency builder. Now we wanted to prove it, and so one of our large insurance company customers uh, was actually a design partner of ours and has been super instrumental in helping us sort of push the envelope of where we already were. But we asked them, okay, we want to do a sort of a benchmark, in our classic MITRE way. We we made sure that it was disciplined and fair, and I don't know why we do this, but it actually works to our advantage at the
Well,
end of the
because you're
day.
engineers, that's
That's
why
right, we're
you think
engineers.
this way.
And so we took a specific adversary group. We did half of the work for the analysis, which is okay. Well, for that group, what are the techniques that matter, and what are the relative weightings of those techniques? Which techniques matter more than others, based on this particular group that we care about? We gave that data to our customer, two different people at our customer. One, a junior engineer, and the other was senior detection engineer. The senior detection engineer did not have our platform. The senior detection engineer, we bound the analysis by 6 hours, and we basically said, go tell us whether or not you can defend against these behaviors, and if not, what should you do about it? Spent most of his time, essentially trying to collect information around what they had. It wasn't all in one place. He didn't do a great job getting the comprehensive picture of where their gaps were and where they weren't. But
Hmm.
was able to identify a gap and was able to identify a recommendation that actually ameliorated that particular gap. That took 6 hours. Conversely, within the first 30 minutes of the analysis, the junior analyst had 11 recommendations of similar ilk, of similar value, and spent the remainder of the time just doing higher level analysis around which of those specific recommendations they wanted to take
Hmm.
to be able to better defend against a specific adversary group. And so, I mean, I like that math. It's 11 times the benefit in 1/12 of the time. And so that
Wow.
is an order of magnitude more efficiency for a really common workflow that occurs in a security organization. That's
Yeah.
just one really good example of how we know our product saves our customers a ton of money and a
Yeah,
ton
I
of
think, when you say it like that, right, and you can give pretty concrete numbers to a company and say, look, we're going to first tell you your posture. Really, it's kind of live posture management, updated every 6 minutes. But more importantly, we'll make you more efficient, right? And maybe even be able to eliminate. I think we talked about this months ago. Was you might be able to eliminate some of the solutions in your stack that just aren't providing you sufficient protection for the money you're spending.
So it's there's probably some of that. I think what we find a little bit more is that oftentimes there's I mean, phishing's a really good example, right? Like we obviously it's a big vector. It's certainly a
Mhm.
big vector for initial access. You got to do something about it. But I've run into some CISOs that have said, well, because that's the biggest vector, we're just going to focus on that. Like that's exactly the wrong mentality,
Yeah.
right? And so I think what you've got to be able to understand is there are lots of different vectors that you have to be able to defend against. And just focusing on that one thing, it's probably a little bit, I mean, it's really short-sighted. But threat informed defense is new. And my expectation is that people will over time, and it's just the sophisticated security leaders that understand threat and understand risk really get this.
Yeah.
Perhaps some other folks that maybe have been really focused on compliance and not so much focused on security or risk reduction have been a little bit slower to the game.
So I was just going to say, what is your perfect buyer profile? And you just said it. I mean, it is the more sophisticated CISO who's building a program that looks broadly across all the risk vectors, right? All the
Yeah,
threats.
large or small, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's funny, our ICP is a little bit bifurcated on the large end. The easiest customers for us to sell are those that have tried to do this because they know it's valuable and have really struggled because it's really hard to do without our platform. On the smaller end, it's a little bit different value proposition. It's a lot to do with typically a security leader may come in from perhaps a larger organization. They understands or she understands risk and understands threat, but they may not have the budget that they need to make a significant or I'll just say the minimally required investment to have a threat intelligence capacity.
Yeah.
In many cases, what we do, because we automated a lot of that analysis, the contextualization of threat intelligence, you don't need to make that huge human capital investment anymore. You can use our threat intelligence. We actually, if you've got another threat intelligence platform, we actually recommend it because I think that their threat intelligence is typically better. But what we do better than anybody is contextualize it for them without making a multi-million-dollar investment in humans to actually process it.
Yeah.
That's a big change in the market, and sort of in a positive way, like where I sort of articulated that MITRE did a lot to democratize the availability of threat intelligence. What we're doing is sort of breaking down that next wall of accessibility because, most companies can't afford to buy threat intelligence analysts.
Right. Oh, yeah. Most of them are farming this out entirely. It's just not something, unless you're a really large entity, which a few of them do. Well, so that makes me think about when you first started bringing this to market, what did you find you were replacing? Were you replacing a spreadsheet or, I mean, really, what kinds of things do people go, oh, I've been doing it this way, but you've automated this for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of it was spreadsheets. A lot of people that sort of recognized that they needed to be able to do this, and the truth is we were doing those spreadsheets too at MITRE. I mean, Rich, when he was at the Center for Threat Informed Defense, along with the rest of the attack team, they created the Attack Navigator metaphor, which really gave sort of a convenient way to visualize. People call them attack heat maps.
Yeah.
We sort of extended that to, well, it's interesting to know where the threat is sort of operating, but I think it's even more valuable to know where the threat is operating that we don't have defenses, this sort of classic threat exposure.
Right.
Where do we have legitimate threat exposure? Where do we not? And so we sort of expanded that metaphor right toward coverage mapping, and it's really been driving the adoption of that, and it's caught on. I think I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. Within 5 years, everyone will be doing coverage mapping. It is better than compliance standards. It will absolutely show you where you're getting risk reduction and what to do about lack of risk reduction. It's easy for us to do that through this coverage map metaphor.
Yeah, I think it's going to catch on really big. All right, like two more questions, and then we'll wrap this up and get you back to doing important things. AI hitting the scene hard. I have to assume that you are looking at how that may be incorporated into your solution. Maybe it already is. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we use it when we need to. We don't integrate it into our core product for intentional reasons. I think we've seen across the industry is that there's some concern, especially with some of our large customers about the provenance of the training data, and so we're really diligent about sort of understanding that sensibility and making sure that we're not putting our customers at risk in that way. We do think the application of AI is important in gaining scale where we need it, and so in some cases in the evaluation of threat intelligence, we'll use it to get outsized ability to process threat intel.
Yeah.
And for us, what it means is that I have a much larger empirical data set upon which we're deriving all of our assumptions. So I mentioned earlier, we're very data oriented. And so we collect that data in a way that makes us confident that we can back up the assumptions that we make. So that's probably where we'll continue to focus. There's some other things that we can do in the future with AI and ML that we'll tread carefully as we do that with our customers to make sure that sort of they understand the risks associated with that because we do. And
Right.
that
Interesting.
answered the question.
Yeah, it did. And I think it's a smart answer, right? It's, we're not, oh, you absolutely, we're incorporating it, we had it in there 3 days ago or 5 months ago, right? We're looking at it, we're evaluating it, how it will benefit us. Yeah, I think that's
I
the
mean, it's funny. Uh, if you care about security, you got to be careful. Rick Howard, he's on our advisory board. He's actually my first advisory board member, and he's a big believer in what we're doing, and he's a legend in the threat intelligence
is.
space.
Yeah.
He'll tell you, I mean, AI will lie with conviction. It will
It
absolutely
will.
lie with
Yes.
conviction. It'll say it, with better elocution than I can, and you'll believe it more, even if it's not wrong. Or if sorry, even if it's
Even
not
if
wrong.
and this is my concern. I mean, I'm using it for some things to help create descriptions, and you just eat it up like it's candy. Like, oh, this must be the gospel truth, and then you have to think about it and go, well, wait a second, let me read what this is. Uh,
Yeah, and
wait, that doesn't seem right. This can't be right.
I am the customer that we designed our product for because I will unpack the assumptions,
Yeah,
right? If you can't walk me back from an assumption that's centered around a high regret action, then I'm not going to take it,
yeah, right,
right? So I think serious CISOs
right.
will share the same sensibility.
Yeah, I think exactly right. So here's my last question. You're giving advice to an aspiring cybersecurity startup. And you do this all the time because I know you're on advisory boards and you work with some VCs. Is there sort of a piece of advice that you go, well, make sure you do this or never do that?
Yeah, go talk to 50 customers before you build a stitch of code.
Love that.
You know,
That's
we did the things in the right order when we started this company, and it's paying dividends to us now. There's no skipping steps. Go
yeah.
talk to customers, stop selling, start listening,
I
you know.
talked to Emily Heath over at CyberStarts a couple of months ago, and she was a member when she was up in Chicago, and she said exactly that. We talk to all of our, she said, we make no investment in any companies before they've written any code. We tell them, don't write any code. Go talk to the market and then come back to us and watch how all your assumptions change. All your theses change a little bit, right?
It's
So
really funny. Just that one sort of final thought on that, and maybe this is a little bit where there's some misalignment in the early stage venture community. There's such an emphasis placed on capital efficiency and the time to getting something delivered to market. The I do think that there's not a huge appetite with early stage investors for investing in at that stage. I think it's really tough, if you're an entrepreneur without financial means to be able to spend the time that you need to have those conversations, ideate effectively, come up with a good idea, and then uh, build something that you can show an investor that they would fund. I think it's rare that the investors will come in before the prototype is built. And so I think that today is a big gap.
I agree. And I
And
wonder how we
early stage
solve that.
venture.
I wonder if CISO ExecNet can play a role in that and say, ideate in front of a group of CISOs. We'll help you build it, right?
Oh, I
Don't
mean,
don't
it's
stitch your
gold for
code.
the entrepreneur. And the other thing I would say is take no for an answer.
Yeah.
If you're starting a company, you can sort of pivot the idea. But if you're hearing that there's not a demand for the thing you want to build, then build something else.
Right. Be willing to pivot and go, okay. And we see this a lot is, well, no, this is the best solution to that problem. Yeah, but all the CISOs we talk to say they're not solving that problem and have no intention of solving it for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So you're either too early to market or you're fixing a problem that no one needs to solve. So interesting. Well, you're clearly solving a problem that people have. And so we're so pleased to have had some time with you today, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing some time with us.
Okay. Awesome.
Thanks.
So
You will. Bye.